Hello there, and thanks for joining me today. I'm digital artist Rutten, and in this video I'll share 10 digital art myths. These are common myths or misconceptions about digital art. Myth number 1, digital art is directly comparable to traditional art. And what I mean by that is people are always comparing digital art to traditional art. Traditional art's better, digital art's better. And really it's apples and oranges. Digital art is a medium, traditional is a genre. Now, if we're talking about comparing painting digitally on a computer to painting on a canvas, then you're directly comparing two mediums. You would be comparing painting digitally to painting with oil paints, for example. And even that's not necessarily a fair comparison because what brushes are you using digitally? Are we comparing manga drawn digitally to oil painting? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. If you want to do a direct, fair comparison, you could compare digital oil painting to traditional oil painting. That might be a much closer comparison and you might be able to draw conclusions about the pros and cons of each. So stop comparing digital art to traditional art, it just doesn't make sense. Myth number 2, digital art is easier to make. Wrong, it is not easier to make. Easier is relative to how much time you can spend on something or how skilled you are as an artist. If you ask a person who has no experience making art to draw on a computer and then to paint on a canvas, chances are they're not really going to be able to do either. And just as well, if you take someone who's very experienced painting digitally and you have them paint traditionally, sure, they're not going to know exactly what to do because they're not familiar with the tools, but they're still going to have all that knowledge that they gained as an artist of light and form and shape and color, and so they'll be able to make a pretty decent piece of art with those tools. Same goes the other way around. If you take a traditional painter and you sit them down in front of a computer and you ask them to paint something, chances are they're going to make a pretty decent looking painting because they're artists and they know a lot about art. And a lot of those skills that you learn as an artist are transferable between digital art and traditional media. In my own personal experience, I dabbled with painting a little bit before I ever discovered digital painting and was just really not into it. I really preferred to draw with ink pens and colored pencils and things like that. But after I got into digital art and had been doing digital art for about a decade, I decided to try acrylic painting, and I was actually pretty good at it. And that's because I learned a lot about painting from painting digitally. It doesn't matter if I'm painting on a canvas or on a computer screen. If I know how to paint, I know how to paint. Myth number 3, digital art is not real art. I don't know why people think it's not real art. Art is an image that an artist creates, and it's something that somebody who enjoys art looks at, and either they like it or they don't like it. But it's not as if digital artists are sitting down at their computer and going, okay, I want to paint a mountain, so I just type in mountain and hit enter, and then the computer just makes the image for them. They still have to learn a lot about mountains, and they still have to have the skill to be able to create that image. They have to have ideas to be able to make an image that people like. And so it doesn't matter if they're doing it on a computer screen or on a canvas, the art that they make is still very valid and still very real art. So what would fake art be? Well, fake art would be art that's not genuine. Art that an artist said they created, but they didn't create it. For example, if I take a photograph of some flowers and I apply an oil painting filter in Photoshop, there's nothing wrong with that. That's still art, but it's photo art. Now, if I print that on a canvas and I take it to a gallery and I tell them that this is an oil painting that I made with oil paints, that's a lie and that's not real, genuine art because I'm not representing it in an honest way. So don't listen to the people that tell you that digital art is not real art. Myth number 4, digital art is cheating. If working with a contemporary medium, such as digital art software, is cheating, then using pre-mixed paints is cheating, and glazing is cheating. Using man-made brushes is cheating. Basically, if you go to the art store and you buy anything that you didn't make yourself, that's cheating. Those pre-stretched canvases, you didn't stretch those canvases, that's cheating. And even if you did stretch your own canvas, did you make the canvas yourself? I don't think so. Did you make that gesso yourself? No, you didn't. So you're using tools to help you make art. Those tools have been around for long enough to where you consider them part of traditional art, but the thing is, enough time will go by that eventually people will accept computers as being legitimate tools, and those will be considered traditional. So basically, if you're not making petroglyphs on a cave wall with your bare hands, then you're cheating. The tools don't make the artist does. Myth number 5, digital art is less valuable than traditional art. Again, this is kind of an apples and oranges comparison. Are we comparing the Mona Lisa to a digital print that I'm selling for $5 on Etsy? If we are, then yes, the Mona Lisa is much more valuable. But if we're comparing a print of the Mona Lisa to a digital painting that I got commissioned to paint and I made thousands of dollars off of it, then in that case, digital art is more valuable. So it's really all relative. Myth number 6 kind of goes hand in hand with myth number 5, and that is digital art is not one of a kind because it can be duplicated. And so some people say that because it doesn't have an original and it can be duplicated, that it's just not as valuable as a painting that someone created on a canvas. But the thing is, digital art does have an original. Sure, it can be duplicated, But any painting can be photographed and then duplicated as well. Sure, the photograph is not going to be a copy of the original that's on the canvas. The original is always going to be more valuable than the print. But if you think about it in the long run, let's compare the Mona Lisa again. How much is the Mona Lisa worth? Probably millions of dollars. It's probably priceless. However, if you think about all the money made off of prints of the Mona Lisa, and people licensing the right to use the Mona Lisa, and all of these things that aren't generating money off of the sale of the actual canvas, in many ways, the digital version or the printed version of the Mona Lisa is much more valuable than the original itself because it can keep generating money for years to come. So in a sense, there is an original and there is a digital copy of traditional paintings. And so the same principles apply to an original digital painting. Sure, you can duplicate it, but that original file is the original file. And if that's lost, you can't make prints off of it anymore. Now, we're not quite at that point where it's commonplace to sell a digital art original, but you very well could paint something, save the original file, put it on a USB drive, never make a copy of it, and that would be an original. And you could treat it just the same as an original on a canvas. If you wanted to, you could even print it and just throw away the digital file and just have a one-off print, and that's the only version of it. And really what this comes down to is people equating the value of something to the scarcity of it or the fragility of it, which ties into the next myth, and that is digital art is not as fragile as traditional art. So I already kind of talked about this a little bit, but let's say you have a traditional painting on a canvas and your studio catches on fire and your canvas burns to the ground and you lose that painting. You don't have any photographs of it, and so you lose a whole bunch of time and effort and a very valuable painting. And so because it's so fragile and it can get destroyed and it can't be replaced, a lot of value is placed on that. But as I mentioned earlier, you can have an original digital painting. I've had actually quite a few digital paintings that I've lost. They've disappeared. I didn't back them up. I only had one copy of it. I never printed it. And they were paintings that I spent a lot of time on. And so they are just as fragile, if not more fragile, because it's very easy for your computer to crash while you're painting, or your hard drive to fail, or for you to accidentally delete a file or overwrite it, and that digital art can just go poof and disappear. And I think when more people begin to appreciate the fragility of digital art, they'll start to place more value on the originals. Myth number 8, only digital art has undos, and undos are unfair. Are undos unfair? Is digital art the only medium that supports undoing? I don't think so. Remember the eraser? If you draw a line with a pencil, you can erase it. Guess what? If you mess up on a canvas, you can scrape the paint off and start again. You can gesso over the entire canvas and undo the whole thing. If you're building a collage and you stick down a picture that you don't like, you can pry it back off and stick it somewhere else. If you're sculpting and the nose is crooked, you can take that clay and you can bend it and move it into shape. So there are lots of ways to correct your work with traditional media. And yes, undo is a little more efficient, but there's nothing wrong with working efficiently. Myth number 9, you need a tablet to make digital art. Totally not true. People make great digital art with their fingers, with a mouse, with an iPad, with vector applications. There are lots of different ways to make great digital art without ever owning a tablet, so don't let that stop you from getting into digital art. And finally, myth number 10, digital artists are not as talented as traditional artists. Again, we're doing that apple and orange general comparison that just doesn't make sense here. You can't compare me, who's a digital artist, to Leonardo da Vinci. That's just not a fair comparison. He's a way better artist. He's always going to be way more well-known than me. I'm not even going to come close to comparing to Leonardo da Vinci. However, there are a lot of really talented, really popular, really well-known digital artists who make a lot of money, sell a lot of art, are in galleries, and have a lot of subscribers on YouTube. They are the modern-day equivalent of Pablo Picasso or Andy Warhol. And there's a lot of digital artists who also do traditional art. And so as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of crossover, and there's a lot of people who are talented in both digital art and traditional art. And so as I mentioned before, all of that talent and all of that skill is transferable between traditional art and digital art. You don't have to do one or the other, and there's a lot of artists who don't because they realize they can do both. So there you go, those are 10 myths about digital art. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video. I have a lot more videos for digital artists like you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.